Welcome to the Deep Core workout from weeks 9 and 10 of Unlock Your Body. The focus on this session is going to be core engagement combined with breathing and the stress response. We're going to start talking about the two different stages of core engagement. The first is engaging our core so that we hold our pelvis in place properly, something you're probably familiar with if you're hypermobile or struggle with proprioception, body awareness, etc. We're going to focus on the difference between how that feels versus active exhaling core engagement. Basically what we're talking about when we say engage the core or brace like you're being tickled when you really need to pee. Additionally, life often requires us to breathe through tension, which is reflected in these 5 moves. And so while we're in the poses, we're going to focus on the feeling of breathing while our core and pelvic floor are engaged, as well as when they're relaxed. By making these mind, muscle, body positioning connections during intentional movement, we can transfer this into daily life to make sure we're breathing through life stressors and tension, and to make sure we aren't holding too much tension in our core and pelvic floor. Let's get started in dead bugs again, whichever variation you're on. While you move through this, inhaling as you lower your leg or your leg and your arm, and then active exhale, then back up to neutral. Take note of how that feels in your deep core and pelvic floor. Specifically, focus on what it feels like to inhale and breathe through core engagement when you're lowering your leg. This is the amount of core engagement you're using to essentially keep your pelvis in neutral. And then as you active exhale, engaging the core further on your way back up, this is the amount of engagement that's required to protect the spine. Just a few more. Moving into bridge pose. Go ahead and get yourself positioned appropriately. Exhale, pushing through your feet to lift your hips, making sure to roll your arm bones back and get your shoulder blades connected to the floor. While you're up here, make sure you're pushing through the front of your hips so your low back isn't dropping at all. Take note of your core engagement here. Take note of how it feels all the way from your knees through your rib cage. Specifically paying attention to your pelvis and how it feels to keep your core engaged while keeping your pelvis in neutral here. Last, bring your awareness to your glutes, your butt muscles. Just take note of how those work together to help support your deep core and hold you in place where you are, keeping your pelvis in neutral. Moving into tabletop bear crawl hold. This time, instead of pushing up on the active exhale, releasing on the inhale and moving with our breath, we're going to push up on the active exhale and we're going to stay there. We're going to keep our core engaged enough to hold us in place like we would in tabletop. We're going to inhale the right foot back, tap the toes a couple of inches behind, active exhale it back to where it was. We're going to repeat that, moving with our breath. Inhale, left foot back, toe tap, active exhale, bring it back to neutral. Same thing here, pay attention to the amount of core engagement required to keep you in tabletop versus the amount of core engagement required to pull your leg back into neutral. This is the hardest thing we've done yet, so feel free to stop early or take a break if you need to. Moving into locust pose, go ahead and lower onto your stomach. This time we're going to bring our attention to our posterior core muscles, the core muscles we have that run down along our back. As you inhale and fill your belly, lifting your chest off the floor, pay attention to how those posterior core muscles feel. Notice how those feel when they're engaged versus strain in the low back that happens just a little bit lower. Moving into tabletop alternating leg extension, you have the option to do a full bird dog here, adding the arm movement in with the leg as well on the inhale. Before we begin, just make sure your pelvis is in neutral and take note of how your core feels here. Now keep your core and your pelvis there as you inhale your leg out, and then brace it further as you active exhale, pulling it in. As we begin progressing to standing moves, it's really important to understand the difference between core engagement for proper posture versus active engagement to protect the spine when we're moving. And that's a lot of what we're doing here. So the amount of engagement required to keep our pelvis in neutral when we're in a position like tabletop is going to be similar to how it should feel when we're standing and trying to just align ourselves properly. Okay, release. Take a little break. We're going to go through this one more time. Moving back into dead bugs. In this round, we're going to bring our attention to a couple of different places. We're going to focus on how the glutes can help our deep core, and then we're also going to focus a little bit more on what our core feels like when it's relaxed and how we can transfer that into daily life. Just continue moving with your breath. Notice here how our core is not really relaxed throughout this move at all. We need a fair amount of engagement as we lower, and then using even more engagement to pull things back up to center. What happens though is often when we're stressed out, we can start to hold this tension without even realizing we're doing it. And so taking note of the amount of tension and engagement we feel can not only help us make sure we're engaging properly, but also make us aware of when we may be holding tension and we didn't realize it. If you find yourself feeling as though you're breathing through a dead bug during the day, that may be an indication that your nervous system is telling you something. Moving into bridge pose. Once you're positioned, start to bring an awareness to your glutes. How do those feel right now while they're supporting the rest of your body, supporting your pelvis, supporting your deep core? Having an understanding of how to properly engage our glutes can help improve posture when we're in standing positions, which we'll get to further in the program. But this is also a sneaky spot where we can hold tension. So just take note of how this feels, and then if you feel yourself clenching your butt cheeks throughout the day, you can say, hey, I'm not in a bridge pose. Why am I so tense right now? What's going on? And ideally, you'd be able to release a little bit of that tension, do some breathing, whatever you need in that moment. Moving into bear crawl hold step backs, or just classic bear crawl hold. This time as you inhale and tap your foot backward, pay attention to the opposite glute. Pay attention to how much work it's doing to help keep both of your hips stable and in a neutral position. How much work it's doing to help keep your hips level to the ground. And how it's working with your deep core to both steady you and help that opposite leg move. Release, moving into locust pose, head to your belly. We're going to bring our attention to our glutes again on this move. As you're inhaling, pushing your belly and the front of your hips into the floor, while also engaging your glutes to help lift your legs. Take note of how engaging your glutes relieves pressure from your low back. Remember, this isn't about how high we can go. This is about making sure that we're properly engaging the muscles, small, controlled movements. So again, we'll start connecting a little bit more of the glute muscles, the core, and proper postural alignment when we're standing later on, but it's really helpful to get an idea of how this feels when we're moving in positions that are a little bit safer on the floor. You're almost done. Last move, heading into tabletop alternating leg extensions, or option to do full bird dog here. Similar to the last couple of moves, I just want you to bring an awareness to how your glutes are helping to support both your steady leg as well as the one that's moving. Focus on how extending on the inhale helps to relieve some of the pressure on your low back, and how bringing your leg back in on the active exhale requires more core engagement all the way down through the front of your hip. And release. Great job. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you feel a little bit more comfortable in your body. And don't forget, the very first 15-minute stability session is available on the other channel. The handle is Shauna UDHD. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you next time.